Good evening. I'm Janine Wester, president of Empower Her of the Palm Beaches and organizer of When We All Vote Palm Beach County Voting Squad. Welcome to When We All Vote Palm Beach County Voting Squad, a conversation with our Palm Beach County Legislative Delegation. I want to thank the members of our delegation for the work they do and the sacrifices they've made being away from their family. We so appreciate you. Thank you to those behind the scenes, member of our voting squad who assisted in planning tonight's event. MJ, Pam, Robin, LaWanda, Melanie, and those you will see on the platform tonight. I love working with each of you and appreciate you so very much. When We All Vote is a leading national, nonpartisan initiative on a mission to change the culture around voting and to increase participation in each and every election by helping to close the race and age gap. Created by Michelle Obama, When We All Vote brings together individuals, institutions, brands, and organizers and organizations to register new voters across the country and advance civic education for the entire family and voters of every age, to build an informed and engaged electorate for today and generations to come. Michelle Obama launched When We All Vote in 2018 and is joined by fellow co-chairs Tom Hanks, Lin-Manuel Miranda, Janelle Monáe, Chris Paul, Faith Hill, Selena Gomez, Lisa Koshai, Megan Rapnor, Shonda Rhimes, Tracy Ellis Ross, Kerry Washington, and Rita Wilson. So many other greats have joined this initiative. For instance, the Palm Beach County Voting Squad is comprised of more than 37 local, nonpartisan organizations representing the many faces of our community. We're standing by the mission to increase participation in elections and to close the voting gap of race and age. In 2020, When We All Vote ran a robust, multifaceted campaign and reached thousands of Palm Beach County citizens to educate them about the voting process. And we got them registered and we got them ready to vote. And now, embarking upon our next step, which brings us here to this platform tonight, hearing from those we elected to represent us. Okay, enough of me rattling. Let's move on to the excitement. Introducing our moderators for the evening are Marcia Hayden, representing our partnership with Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and Ashley Cassie-Doe, representing the League of Women Voters, Palm Beach County Young Leaguers. Marcia, Ashley.
Thank you, Janine. One of our two moderators tonight is Michaela Guerrier, and she's a public health professional at Healthy Mothers, Healthy Babies of Palm Beach County, and they focus on alleviating health disparities in maternal health amongst the Black population. She is the daughter of two Haitian immigrants. Michaela graduated from the University of South Florida and is currently pursuing a master's in public health with a concentration in maternal and child health at Florida International University. She is a member of Gamma Gamma Sigma chapter of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. And there she serves as her chapter's social justice and civil action chair.
Thank you, Janine. It is my honor to introduce Reagan Fox. He is a graduate of the Watson Institute with Lynn University. He's the founder of Gen Z Votes, and he spearheaded Lynn University's Get Out the Vote Committee in 2020. So welcome, Reagan. We're so excited to have you moderating for us.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much, Ashley, for that introduction, and Marcia for that introduction as well. And thank you so much to the audience for joining us in tonight's 2020 legislative session wrap-up. We are enormously grateful to When We All Vote Palm Beach County Voting Squad for providing this virtual space for us tonight. We also want to welcome our state legislatures who have joined us for tonight's conversation with our Palm Beach County legislative delegation. The goal is to learn about the successes and failures of this past legislative session and the impact on our county itself. Before we meet our delegation's members, we have invited Ed Chase of the Palm Beach County government to give us an overview of the county's legislative priorities and help us to understand how the county has fared during the legislative session. I want to welcome Angela Cruz to introduce Mr. Chase tonight.
Good evening, thank you so much. And it's my honor today to introduce Ed Chase. He is Palm Beach County's Director of Intergovernmental Affairs and Community Engagement. He formerly served as a District Director for U.S. Representative Tom Lewis for 8 years and U.S. Representative Mark Foley for 5 years. He previously served as the Executive Director of the Palm Beach County Legislative Delegation from 2001 to 2010. He was President and CEO of the Palm Beach North Chamber of Commerce from 2010 to 2012. He was also an executive with a local publishing and media company before returning to Palm Beach County government since 2019. Thank you so much for being here, Ed.
Absolutely, Angela. Good evening, everyone. It's nice to be back with my partners from the state legislature and the state senate. I'm just going to take a few minutes and kind of give you a 30,000-foot overview of kind of what happened on the budget and kind of what happened to a few of the county priorities. And then I'd like to leave as much time as we can to let our senators and our representatives talk to you about how they got these things accomplished. So let's just start with the session itself. Going into the legislative session in Tallahassee with COVID restrictions in place, the Senate was pretty much locked down. The House building was kind of locked down. The Capitol was locked down. You had to get a guest to come get you to bring you into the building. We all knew it was going to be a little weird. And this session absolutely did not disappoint. It was a little weird. It started normally, I thought, except for the number of people in the buildings. Palm Beach County Day was not as it usually is. Usually we have 230 people from Palm Beach County roaming the halls of the Capitol the first week of session. And we couldn't do that this year. We had to do that via this. We did a lot of Zoom calls with state leaders, the Attorney General, and some of our delegation members. So with those restrictions in place, we had to pivot, we had to adapt just like our representatives and our senators did. So we made the best of it. We did a lot of these calls. We spoke with our state representatives, our state senates from, we originated a call from the Emergency Operations Center every Wednesday morning. So we were in very close contact with them to give them the support that we hoped that they needed. And then we were able to work with them throughout the process. So as we look at the budget, it was a $101 billion budget. I'm pretty sure that's the first time we've ever gone over 100 billion. When the governor did his vetoes, he vetoed about 1.5 billion of that. So Palm Beach County, we had 12 individual items that were vetoed for a total of about $6.2 million. One of those items made up most of that. It was a $3.5 million Central Palm Beach County infrastructure project. So we're never happy about vetoes going forward. It just gives us the opportunity to work with the governor's office and try to educate them on what we're trying to do here in Palm Beach County. The biggest chunk of the budget is the Health and Human Services budget. And that's almost $45 billion this year. Just a couple of things, 4.3 billion of that is to cover the highest Medicaid enrollee workload in history in the state. And $240 million of that was set forth to extend postpartum Medicaid coverage to mothers and newborns. So that coverage used to be only 2 months, and the legislator put that in to extend that from 2 months until 12 months. When we look at some of our transportation, tourism, and economic development the federal money that we were able to get to boost our budget this year certainly helped in these areas. So our small county road resurfacing project or small county outreach project under Department of Transportation were funded very well. That helps us in our rural communities. The economic development partners that we work with, Visit Florida, the Florida Space Foundation, Enterprise Florida, they were funded at almost $81 million. And our state affordable housing programs were not fully funded, but funded fairly well. So went through a process with our affordable housing dollars this year. Originally, the legislature wanted to kind of split the amount of money that comes from dock stamp revenues to go to 1/3 to housing, 1/3 to resiliency, and 1/3 to wastewater treatment. That got a lot of resistance and blowback from some of our local housing partners, not just in Palm Beach County, from across the strait. And they went back to the legislature and said, this is not really the intent of this money. More of it should go to affordable housing. So they did reconsider, and the legislature was able to boost, add an additional $60 million to that housing number. So of the affordable housing programs, SHIP is the large one. It's $146 million. Those are given to local governments so we can partner with companies who build housing. So out of that, we in Palm Beach County are expected to receive about $7.3 million. And we use that and leverage that money to bring in probably over $20 million of housing with just that $7.3 million. Under agricultural and natural services, we were able to fund very well some of the most important environmental programs in the state. The Everglades restoration was funded at $360 million. The Blue-Green Algae Task Force, which we feel very important here in Palm Beach County, was funded at almost $11 million. Florida Forever was $102 million. And a project to continue work on the C-51 reservoir in Palm Beach County out on Southern Boulevard, that was given just by itself a $48 million appropriation, which largely came from the federal money that we received. So some Palm Beach County projects that were funded this year, thanks to our state representatives, our state senators on this show tonight, who did the work to put these requests in and move these through the process. The West Technical Education Center out in Belle Glade had almost $430,000. The Loggerhead Marine Life Center got funding. The Palm Beach County Rape Crisis Center, the Butterfly House, which is very important to Palm Beach County, was funded well. Riviera Beach Public Safety Complex got funded. So these are all items in the budget that these local representatives who you're talking to tonight did the work to file and make sure that those projects were fully funded. So another issue that was statewide was $150 million for beach funding. Usually to fully fund the beach program, we're happy when it gets to $50 million. When it's funded at $150 million, that is spectacular, not just for Palm Beach County, but for our entire state. So we are grateful for that. So that means that in Palm Beach County, we will have 10 beach projects funded for just under $12 million. I'm going to leave to the representatives and senators to talk about some of the large statewide bills that we heard an awful lot about over the past couple of months. State sales tax, anti-rioting, the elections bill, just a couple of bills that Palm Beach County that we followed very closely, really focused on emergency management. So we are now coming out of our post-COVID situation. Our county emergency order finally extinguished itself on Sunday. The state's order also, their emergency order was left to finish over the weekend. So we're thrilled about moving out of that COVID issue. What we did find over the course of the past 14 months is this was an issue, this was an emergency like we've never seen before. Hurricanes, we can deal with. Sometimes it might be a couple of days or several weeks. Back in 2004, I think we have a very good glide path of how to deal with those emergencies. COVID was something else. So as we went through with that, our partners in the House and Senate were right with us, trying to make the best decisions as we could going forward with an issue that we just really didn't know a whole lot about. So The Senate and the House this year kind of looked at the process that lots of local governments took during COVID, and they want to kind of tighten that up a little bit. So in the future, if local government does put forth an emergency order, we can do an emergency order for 7 days, and then we can extend that 5 weeks after that. But that's it. So even when we do that, the order, any emergency order that we issue at the county level has to be very, very narrowly tailored to address a compelling health or safety purpose. It also authorizes the governor and legislature to invalidate those actions. So, we look at those as sometimes that might be make things a little more difficult for us. We feel in Palm Beach County that we did. We made the right steps. We were careful when we needed to be. We were ready to open when we were able to be. But those were issues that we did work with the sponsors of those bills to try to loosen up our ability to take care of our own business here at home. So that's something that we will have to deal with going forward. We also were working on a public records exemption for people who seek shelter. So if a hurricane came and we have a list of people that were in the shelter in the past, a nefarious character could come and request that information, their name and their address, their phone number, and then at their most vulnerable time, kind of target them for whatever purposes they found. So we were able to get a public records exemption that would exempt their address and their phone number from public records. So that just makes us feel that we're offering our residents a little safer shelter in our shelter. And I will end with this. I just want to talk a little bit about 4 of our local Palm Beach County bills. These are bills that just affect Palm Beach County. So we had 4 passed this year. One was the Village of Wellington, Representative Matt Wilhite. This would prohibit the sale and use of fireworks within the equestrian preserve at the Village of Wellington. It's an important business for them. He also sponsored the Port of Palm Beach local bill that kind of updates the title and sets their salaries in state statute. Representative Roth, who's with us tonight, sponsored 2 of our successful local bills. One was for the Indian Trail Improvement District. They are looking to possibly incorporate into municipalities sometime in the future. And Representative Roth's bill gave them the feasibility to go about to make that determination and at least offer them the opportunity to fund some of those studies going forward. And finally, he also authored the Loxahatchee River Environmental Control District. This was a codification of a lot of special acts and conforming changes that have just been made over a series of decades and just tightened up their local bills. So those local bills all passed. 2 of them have been signed by the governor. We're waiting on the other 2, but that should just give you a little taste of kind of what the budget looked like this year, how appropriations are flowing into the county. And the reason for that is because of the members on this screen tonight, the state senators and state representatives who put those requests in for the budget. So I'm going to log off. I will listen to the rest of this. I'll answer any questions you have, but let's turn this over to the people that got all this done, and that's our Palm Beach County Legislative Delegation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ed, for all of the awesome information, and thank you again for joining us. And now on to our main event. Here are the rules for tonight's forum. Each legislator will have 90 seconds to introduce themselves, tell us about one bill or issue you are most proud of this past session, and tell us what disappointed you about this session, including if there were any issues that you thought should have been addressed. Again, you will have 90 seconds for this introduction. We will display a timer to assist with keeping track of time. We will then move to our question and answer segment. We will allow a maximum of 4 legislators to respond to each question. If you wish to respond, please use the raised hand feature on the Zoom. We respectfully ask that your remarks are nonpartisan and any talk of elections is off limits. These responses should also be limited to 90 seconds. Again, a timer will be displayed, and we ask that you keep an eye on the timer so we can have time to hear your peers. And should you go over, myself or Reagan will interject. Once we conclude the question and answer segment, and if time permits, we will take audience questions. So to those of you watching, you may place your questions in the Q&A box here on Zoom, or in the comments via Facebook Live. All questions will be vetted by our team, so please keep questions respectful and not targeted to any one individual. And to respond, delegation members should use the raised hand feature. Now, we are well aware there is never enough time to cover all of the issues in a limited time and setting such as this one. So if your questions are not addressed, feel free to contact members of our delegation directly. So with that being said, if everyone is ready, let's get on with our introductions. Go ahead,
Thank
Reagan.
you so much, Michaela. We will begin with our wonderful members of the Florida House of Representatives tonight. And we'll be starting in numerical order by district number, starting with Skidmore, Roth, Hardy, and Schlossberg. You now may begin, Ms. Skidmore.
Good evening. Thank you so much for inviting us to be here tonight. My name is Kelly Skidmore. I represent House District 81, which is west of the Turnpike from Boca Raton through Delray Beach, Boynton Beach, Lake Worth, tiny bit of Wellington, and then it runs out and takes up Pahokee, Belglade, and South Bay out in the Glades. It's kind of a skinny, long district, and it's a very beautiful area out in the Glades I'm happy to represent. I served in the House previously from 2006 to 2010, and I'm excited to be back. My first session back was definitely unique because of COVID, but it was kind of like riding a bike. I was happy to get back on again. And we had some good successes with appropriations and with some of our legislation that I worked with Senator Berman on. And I'm happy to be a big part of our caucus and work with all of the members of the delegation. And looking forward to getting your questions tonight and passing on the information of how we do what we do in Tallahassee.
Thank you. Ms. Roth, please proceed. Or Mr. Roth, I'm sorry.
Yes. Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to speak tonight. I'll go right into it. I am from District 85. Just think of it as Northeast Palm Beach County to kind of cut to the chase. I thought I'd never say this, that I thought last year was the best year we've had out of my 4 years, and this year was even more productive. I have 30 bills that I could highlight out of the 200 that were passed that I think were significant. Many of them were actually reactions to national issues. So I thought the legislature was very responsive to what was going on around the country. We passed 4 bills related to COVID, including liability. We did 4 bills protecting our communities. 2 of them were dealing with the police. It was law enforcement practices and protecting during protecting your community during riots. We also did a major taxation bill, online taxation to bring $1 billion in the state and eventually reduce the sales tax on business rentals, which all representatives have to pay. So I thought that was very good. We did 6 major education bills, school choice. We did 4 bills affecting home rule. We also did 2 major insurance bills. And then we also had 3 bills dealing with the military that were passed and signed into law. So it was a huge thing, a very big protection. Me personally, I was happy to see that $402 million was spent for Florida Forever to deal with the wildlife corridor. And then Sadowski, I played a major role in getting that number up to 48%.
Thank you, Mr. Roth. I'm sorry I have to cut you short. We are in a time crunch tonight. Love all that you're saying. But Mr. Hardy, you may begin.
Thank you. So yes, my name is Representative Omari Hardy, and I represent District 88 in the Florida House of Representatives. This was my first legislative session, and it was an extraordinarily eventful one. Unfortunately, I could not find many highlights in this legislative session. I found, unfortunately, lots of lowlights from House Bill 1, which supposedly was about combating the public disorder. Was really about attacking our First Amendment, to the ban on transgender student athletes participating in sports as they have in this state since 2013, to the gutting of the Sadowski Trust Fund for affordable housing. This was a legislative session to remember, but unfortunately not for very good reasons, at least not for the folks in the district that I represent. Whoops. Okay, so Kelly said that she could barely hear me. Let's see here. Can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yes, you're sounding great, sir.
Okay, sorry. Now I was just saying that I couldn't find many highlights in this legislative session. I found lots of what I call lowlights. We had combating the public disorder, which was really an attack on our First Amendment rights. That was HB1. We had the gutting of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, cutting those funds by 50%, institutionalizing the sweeps that have been occurring in previous years. And in addition to that, we had a needless political attack on transgender student athletes who had been competing in the state of Florida without any issue since 2013. And so unfortunately, even though this was my first legislative session, not much to brag about other than the fact that we did get $1 million into the budget.
I'm sorry I have to keep on cutting everyone off, but we are in a time crunch. But last but not least, the wonderful Miss Schlossberg. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. I'm Emily Schlossberg. I represent House District 91, which is Delray, Boca, and Boynton Beach, east of the Turnpike. I represent the southernmost part of Palm Beach County. I am so pleased to be here with the League of Women Voters. I actually was one of the founding members of the Young Leaguers, so it's so good to see some of you Young Leaguers here. What a great, great organization. I do have a bill that actually is sitting right now on the governor's desk that I'm going to brag about. It's House Bill 673. I am the co-chair of the Women's Legislative Caucus, and this was one of our big bills. It's Gail's Law, and it's named for a resident of Orlando, Gail, who was viciously and brutally sexually assaulted. She did what most victims are told to do. She went and had an invasive forensic exam, and she believed that the law enforcement was going to use the results of that exam to find her attacker. And unfortunately, her rape kit sat on a shelf for over 30 years untested. And just last year, she got word that her case was still opened, and they went back and they found her kit and they tested it, and it had a match to a guy who was incarcerated for the last decade. And so Gail had sat for over 20 years not knowing, and had that her assault kit been tested and those results transmitted to her, she would have known her attacker was not there. So the bill creates a sexual assault tracking system and gives victim access. I see it. My 90 seconds is up.
I'm sorry, like I said, we're under a time.
One more thing, it's on its way to be signed by the governor. So it's very good legislation that benefits women.
Awesome.
and sexual. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all for your responses. And now we will move to introductions by members of the Florida Senate in numerical order of their districts: Harrell, Polsky, Powell, and Berman. So Senator Harrell, you're up first.
Thank you so very much. And I want to welcome everybody to this wonderful forum, and I appreciate everybody tuning in. I do have to leave at 7:30. I have grandchildren that need to get to bed, and I'm kind of in charge today. So I will leave at 7:30. But I do want to highlight a few things. Well, first of all, I represent District 25, which is Martin and St. Lucie counties. And in Palm Beach County, I do represent kind of the western northern side, Pahokee and Jupiter Farms area, which I just love. And I thought it was a very successful session. The budget was fantastic. We put huge dollars into the environment. I've worked in that arena for many, many years, including $360 million into stopping the releases from Lake Okeechobee. And of course, for Pahokee, the Blue-Green Algae Task Force money is so key. Also worked very closely with Dave Ehrenberg, the state attorney, and we were able to continue the hard work we've done to address substance use issues and sober homes, and making sure that that there's opportunity there for people who are addicted to substances to really go down the straight path. Also, I'm very, very happy and just thrilled. There's something I've worked on for 3 years, and that concerns our voluntary pre-K. We passed that in 2004, I believe, was the constitutional amendment. And we've been putting over $400 million a year into VPK. And really, when you only get and you have 43% of your kids not ready for kindergarten, we needed to do something. So this is a major step forward, major changes. And
I'm sorry, Senator,
the
time is up. I'm sorry, that minute and 30 seconds flies by. I understand.
It's too fast, too fast. But thank you all for doing this. And if I have to drop off at 7:30, I do apologize.
It's okay, we understand. Thank you for being here. And Senator Polsky, you're up next, whenever you're ready.
Thank you so much. I represent District 29, which is Southern Palm Beach County and parts of Northwest Broward. I wanted to highlight in the short 90 seconds something we didn't do, because you asked that question. We did not deal with unemployment insurance. This was the largest issue with all of us during the whole pandemic. And it's very unfortunate that we didn't raise the rate or really fix the system. In fact, we're getting more calls than we have in a long time about how bad the system is. And it's really unfortunate that the legislature didn't spend its ample time working on problems for Floridians. Personally, I'm very proud. I have two bills sitting in the governor's desk right now, one to help the environment in our coastal areas and one to help low-income seniors. I'm very proud of the appropriations we did. But overall, I'd say the session was really difficult. Exactly what Representative Roth said, we dealt with national issues instead of dealing with issues related to Floridians. As I said, unemployment, and we dealt with things that were, in many of our opinions, just red meat for the base and did not move the agenda along for what Floridians need. We didn't need to deal with transgender athletes. We didn't need to deal with protests. It's been described as keeping protests peaceful, but all of those actions are already illegal. It was totally unnecessary. And there were multiple other bills relating to preemption of home rule and relating to social media, which were not necessary, relating to intellectual viewpoints on college campuses, unnecessary, and took time away from the issues that we need to deal with.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for your response. Next up, we have Senator Powell, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Of course, I am Bobby Powell, Jr., State Senator representing Senate District 30, which is the northern parts of Palm Beach County, inclusive of the town of Palm Beach, all the way over to Royal Palm, encapsulating West Palm Beach and going all the way to the Martin County line. Perception is everything. Of course, myself, I am a Democrat. So for me, and a Black Democrat at that. So for me, this session was not a good session. It was one of the most oppressive sessions that I've ever been a part of. And I've been elected for 9 years and been a part of the legislature for 12. There's an attack on voting with Senate Bill 90 in terms of the opportunity to vote by mail. There was an attack on the freedom of speech and the right to protest with the HB1, Hate Bill 1 anti-protest legislation. There was also, after this legislation was signed, it was signed without the public having the opportunity to view it. And we have talked about that as if it's okay. And just being a part of the legislature this year without people being able to come into the Capitol was depressing as well, because your voices were silenced. I believe in public participation as an AICP certified planner, and we did not have public participation. We did not have the opportunity for people to participate. One bill that I will say that was a highlight was at least 7051, which is House Bill 7051, which is the police reform legislation, in which the Democrats and Republicans came together to work on some reforms that was pushed primarily by the Florida Legislative Black Caucus. Representative Dottie Joseph, Representative Fentress Driscoll, Senator Bracey were the ones that kind of encapsulated it at the end to bring it home. It was passed in the House by
I'm sorry, Senator, your time is up, unfortunately. But thank you for your response. Thank you. And last but not least, we do have Senator Berman. So whenever you're ready, you may respond.
Great, thank you. I'm Lori Berman. I represent Senate District 31, which is Central Palm Beach County. I had 7 pieces of legislation passed, but 2 that are really significant. One was because of COVID and the COVID slide. So it allows parents to hold children back for this academic year. If your child is in kindergarten through 5th grade, you only have until June 30th. Actually, yeah, you have until June 30th. So the cutoff date is rapidly approaching. I did that bill with Rep. Skidmore. I also got the Purple Alert, which was a bill I worked on for 3 years, which says that if somebody goes missing with a cognitive disability similar to the Amber and Silver alerts, but covering the age group in between the two of those, the police and law enforcement will have a system to look for them immediately. So those were some of my bright spots. I agree with many of my colleagues. There was a lot of things that were not bright spots. We discussed things that really were not a problem at all. We just had, the governor just signed a bill about intellectual diversity, supposedly doing a survey on college campuses, which was completely unnecessary. There, just as the anti-protest legislation was completely unnecessary. So it was a tough session all around. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you all for your responses.
Once again, thank you all for your questions and your introductions. Now on to the questions. Sorry, I messed that up there. And this one's going to be popular. There was heavy debate with the eventual passage of House Bill 1, entitled Combating Public Disorder. What is the impact of House Bill 1 on organized protesting ultimately? And up to 4 legislators may answer this question. So please use your raised hand feature if you wish to respond. And I know this is going to be a hard one, but we please ask for you to respond in 90 seconds, and I will be cutting you off if you do go over. With that being said, so let me check this out. We have Rep. Hardy to go first. Rep, you would like to respond?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir, I can.
Great. Okay. So I think the effect of House Bill 1 will be that many folks who simply want to go out and peacefully protest will be discouraged from doing so, because what House Bill 1 does is it muddies the waters and it makes individuals at protests responsible for the actions of other folks who are there. If you're with a large group of people and a handful of knuckleheads become violent or vandalistic, while everyone else is protesting peacefully, you're all of a sudden wondering whether you're participating in a protest or a riot.
A word.
And that's what House Bill 1 basically does is it muddies the waters, it discourages folks from exercising their First Amendment rights, and that's why they connected these things that are already crimes to the specific act of protesting to discourage folks from doing that.
Thank you so much, sir. Next with the response is Senator Polsky.
Thank you. One part of the bill that doesn't get a lot of attention, which I think is really important, is this blanket immunity for someone who would, for example, run over a protester who happened to be standing in the street. And we all know that Heather Heyer died from a vicious terrorist who purposefully killed her when she was on the street. And there's just no reason whatsoever. I'm not worried about people in cars being, inconvenienced if there's an important protest going on. If it spills over a little bit into the street, then they need to take precautions and not run people over. It's the human thing to do. And to give those people liability gives them a license to kill and to hurt. And it's just protecting the, so-called innocent, the people with privilege who, don't want to be bothered by this protest. And so I think that's a really evil part of the bill. And it just goes to show the priorities of the legislature, that that's more important than protecting the peaceful protesters.
Thank you so much for that response, Senator Polsky. Next, we'll bring on Rep. Roth with a cool tie tonight. Thank you for that.
I just started my clock and I want to get my 90 seconds. There's a lot of disagreement over what HB 1 does. So I remind everybody, you can go to myfloridahouse.gov and actually read the legislation, and you'll find out that it actually is pretty reasonable legislation. It's been miscategorized. The main purpose of the bill was to make sure that if you were having a protest or a riot and people were violent and destroying property, that they would be arrested and they would have a higher degree, whether it was a second-degree misdemeanor, and now will become a first-degree misdemeanor. So there's just natural things that needed to be done to make sure people understood that in the state of Florida, if you have a riot or a protest and you commit violence, that you are going to be arrested. We do believe very strongly in the right to peacefully protest, but there were a lot of protests throughout the nation where it was obviously anything more than peaceful. I think the most important thing was that it actually said, if your city was not enforcing public safety and allowed buildings to be burned down, that you as a private citizen could bring a legal action against your city and they would no longer have sovereign immunity. So please protect people's property, which was not done in many places around the country. When you put that together with the bill that Bobby Powell,
Thank you, Representative Roth, but I will have to cut you off there. And we have Representative Berman, or Senator Berman, I'm sorry, to respond, and that will be our last response to this topic.
Thank you so much. Of course, we all read the bill and we understand the bill, and what the bill does is it even creates new crimes, which are totally unnecessary. Now in the bill, there's a new thing called mob incitement. So if, like, I think it's three people get together and they do something that's considered threatening, it doesn't have to be an actual physical force. They can be charged and go to jail. And the way this bill reads, because I do read the bill always in full, they can't even get bail that first night. They have to stay in jail for 1 day. This bill was done for purposes of, just like I said before, there were bills that were done that were totally unnecessary. We didn't have any real problems here in the state of Florida. This was a bill just to gin up the base and make them feel that there were problems when they don't exist here in the state of Florida. We all know that the way the bill is written, it can take innocent people into the web and have them arrested, get a police record, and really create problems for citizens who are just trying to assert their constitutional rights. And it's extremely disturbing. And I'm hoping that it'll the courts will determine it's unconstitutional. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator.
All right, and thank you all for your responses. So on to our next question. In early May, Governor Ron DeSantis signed Senate Bill 90 into law right here in Palm Beach County. What are the long-term effects that Senate Bill 90 will have on Florida voters? So again, we will allow 4 legislators to respond. So please be sure to use the raised hand feature. And like before, you'll have 90 seconds. So let's take a look. Representative Schlossberg. All right, you're up first.
Thank you. Yeah, so Senate Bill 90 creates unnecessary barriers to voting. I mean, this is something that actually really affects the League of Women Voters in multiple ways. Because what it does is previously, before Senate Bill 90, volunteers were allowed, if you weren't getting money, or if you're volunteering for the League, volunteers of third-party organizations were allowed to deliver absentee ballots to the polls or bring ballots around. Now, this severely limits to the ballots that you can only return 2 ballots unless it's an immediate family member. So that goes to volunteers as well. It also limits drop boxes. So in the 2020 election, drop boxes were a very convenient, accessible way of dropping off our ballots. Now there's restrictions. So instead of 24-hour drop boxes, they're only available during voting hours and they have to be manned. Another provision was the vote by mail requests. Previously, you could request your vote by mail ballot for up to 2 cycles, 2 general election cycles. Now you have to request it every cycle. Another prohibition that was created was handing out food and water to voters standing in line at the polls. It gets incredibly hot out there. So unless you're working for the supervisor of elections, you're prohibited from giving out food and water. And the last thing is the deceptive warnings that are required when the League of Women Voters are registered.
I'm sorry, Representative Schlossberg, you're out of time, but thank you for your response. Next, we have Representative Hardy. You may respond.
Thank you. Look, the effect of Senate Bill 90 will be to suppress the votes of Floridians, and it was passed based on a lie promulgated by the former president, Donald Trump. And that lie was that he lost the election, not because the other guy, President Joe Biden, got more votes, but rather because there were voters fraudulently voting. And so Republicans, not just in Florida, but across the United States, decided to pass bills exactly like this based on that lie to make it harder for voters to request vote by mail ballots, to make it harder for them to return vote by mail ballots, to make it more difficult and expensive for supervisors of elections to administer elections in ways that make it easy for folks to return these ballots. The entire point of it is to make it more difficult for folks to vote, because the leadership of the legislature fears what happens when people exercise their power and participate in democracy. And so, you know, the effect of it, unfortunately, will be that whatever kind of government we have here in the state of Florida, which the Republicans already control, will be will be much less representative than it is right now. And that's unfortunate.
All right, thank you for your response. And next we have Senator Polsky.
Thank you for indulging me. I have to drop off at 7:30, so I'll make this my last response. All you have to do is look at the intent of this bill to understand why we have such a problem with it. The only reason why vote by mail got more difficult in this bill, and why the registration period is shorter, and why vote by mail boxes are not as accessible, and why other people can't carry senior citizens' ballots, closed sealed ballots, to a drop box, is because Democrats outvoted Republicans for the first time in vote by mail in the state by 600,000 votes. And prior to that, the sponsor of the Senate bill had voted to increase the years of registration. It was their thinking that Republicans were using the vote by mail, so they made it easier and easier year after year. And what happens this year, the first time that Democrats used the mail-in ballot more, they wanted to change it. And you could also tell the intent, because it started off much more draconian and through a lot of public pressure, especially from Republican supervisors of elections, then it became not as terrible, but still terrible nonetheless. So the intent is all you need to know. And yes, it will affect voting. It makes it more difficult, and it's incumbent upon all of us and your organizations to get the word out and explain what's allowed and what's not allowed, so that people continue to vote, because I know that that is why your groups exist, to make sure when we all vote, everyone needs to vote. So please, everyone, just keep voting no matter what.
Awesome, wonderfully said. Thank you, Senator. And next we have Senator Harrell. You're up next.
Thank you so very much. And I have to respectfully disagree with my colleagues and what has been said thus far. I was fortunate enough to participate as an observer of the Iraqi elections in 2010, and actually was in Baghdad for that. So I understand the value of the integrity in elections. And that is truly what this bill does. It makes sure that our elections in Florida are going to be valid. One of the things I think is so important is it extends and makes formal the governor's action to extend the canvassing period. We had our ballots done at the earliest in the whole country, and we actually knew what the election outcome was. And by extending this validation, you also allow people to cure their ballots. Our senior citizens, especially being one of them, our signatures change as we age. So you want to be able to cure that ballot if your signature is not accurate. And one of the reasons we want to make sure you request that ballot is to validate that signature early, so that you have time to sign a new card if you need to do it. There are very important reasons for doing this. I really believe that this is a step in the right direction. Florida wants to make sure that that every vote counts, every vote is counted, and every vote is by a voter in the state of Florida. And I think this bill goes in the right direction to ensure the integrity of elections here in Florida.
All right on time. You literally ended at 0 seconds. That was awesome. And we actually have.
I do have to leave, so I have a 7:30. So that will be my last response. But thank you for the opportunity.
Not a problem. It was a pleasure having you. Thank you. And we actually have time for one more response. So we'll hear from Senator Bobby Powell.
Thank you for that. And I'll tell you this. We talk about ethics in elections, the idea of integrity. When you talk about it, the governor of this state indicated that this was the best election that we've had in the history of the state of Florida. We've opened up the opportunity for people to vote in previous years to make it more accessible. This year, we've restricted it. And the reason that is to make sure that not as many people who are open to change and open to good ideas are able to participate in the process. Dr. Martin Luther King, who people have been known to quote and state, who, by the way, had been arrested several times. As a matter of fact, he wrote the letter from the Birmingham jail, from where of all places, jail. This restriction, what happened, one of the worst things was manning vote by mail boxes. They said, well, if you don't man them, people can put bombs or damage ballots, but you can mail them in. Guess what? They can damage mailboxes. So all of this stuff that's being said is to promulgate fear. It's not true. It's not accurate. As a matter of fact, this is probably one of the worst bills that we've passed in recent history.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for your response. And you guys are doing very well on time, so we can actually take one more. So Representative Roth, you're up next.
Thank you for that. You know, we're going to disagree because we're looking at it from different perspectives. But I agree with what Senator Harrell said, that the main purpose was to make it easier for people to vote. We codified vote by, we increased the information required for vote by mail ballots to make sure they're the right people. And then we also codified the ballot boxes. I think it's totally reasonable to do what we did. We changed the bill in committee, took out the fact that you had to have an attestation if you were carrying additional ballots. We took that part out. I talked to Supervisor Elections Wendy Link at length about this, and so we took that out. But we did leave in there that you would have ballot boxes and they would be designated places, but they would only be open during times of election. We have 14 early voting days in Palm Beach County. We have vote by mail ballots. We have ballot boxes. We are increasing the thing. So to say we're restricting it is like saying it's suppressing the ballot to require a voter ID. Everybody knows that's not suppressing the ballot. So I'm happy that we're continuing to go in the right direction, because we got to make sure that whoever votes is a legal voter. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your response. Unfortunately, we have to move on to the next question. So maybe on the next round, Senator.
Yes, so for the next question, it was no secret that this session, several bills were passed limiting home rule. Is our legislature against local governments making decisions it deems appropriate for their local communities? And I will start with Senator Berman.
Thank you. I would say that this year was one of the most egregious in our attacks on local government. And the question was, is the legislature against the local governments? And I would have to answer in the affirmative. We had so many different bills in so many different ways that we did preempt local governments. We preempted local governments from having a referendum to which the people voted on to not allow certain ships in port. We preempted governments from where they can put gas stations. We preempted governments from how they can regulate home-based businesses. We preempted governments from cottage food industries raising the amount from 50,000 to 250,000. So basically your next door neighbor can be running a huge food service business and you can't regulate it. We even went so far as to discuss design review. We said that that the local governments can't regulate designs of houses. There was an exemption made because the cities got so upset about that. If you have an architectural review board, you can do it. But there's no question that Tallahassee has inserted its judgment in place of the local government's judgment. And I am against that because I think the government closest to the people is the one who does the best job. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I will have to cut you off there. And next up is Rep. Hardy.
Yes, thank you for asking this question. So I have somewhat of a mixed record on home rule because I have somewhat of a mixed view on home rule. I'm an African-American man. And one of the things that African-American folks experienced were segregated neighborhoods and segregated schools. And a lot of these things were driven not only by policy at the federal level with the FHA encouraging the redlining of communities, but a lot of this stuff was driven by folks in local government trying to find roundabout ways to exclude, in particular, people of color and working class people from certain communities within their jurisdiction. And there's a thing called exclusionary zoning, which is driven largely by local government officials, right? And so where I draw the line is I believe in home rule, except when local governments are using their power to serve more or less entrenched and affluent, typically homeowning folks who speak with a loud voice, asking them to do things that may not benefit the broad base of individuals, not only in their jurisdiction, but in their region. And with affordable housing and impact fees, and also with design, there is a nexus from some of the regulations that we've seen to some of the things that we know have a disproportionate racial impact. I would refer you to an article by Kristen Capps about cities across the United States of America that use very onerous design guidelines to effectively require that home builders build only expensive homes, right? One way to backdoor in, right? Not the opposite of affordable housing is design guidelines. So
Thank you, sir. Yep. I will have to cut you off once again. I'm sorry. But next up is Rep. Skidmore.
Great, thank you. So I won't repeat what some of my colleagues have said, the examples of the preemption, but to just focus on the hypocrisy that the legislature really promoted this past session. We had memorials and resolutions and all kinds of things telling Congress what it can and cannot do. And then we turned around and we told local governments more than a dozen times what they could or could not do in terms of their rules. So there was a lot of spoiled teenager in the legislature this session, and we talked out of both sides of our mouth. Not all of us, but leadership certainly did.
Thank you very much. And then I lastly had Senator Powell. Looked like he had his hand raised. Senator, is that right? Or looks like he is not. Oh, there he is.
Absolutely. The question was, does the legislature dislike local governments or home rule, correct?
Yeah, is the legislature against local governments making decisions deemed appropriate for their local communities?
Well, absolutely. Florida is several different states in one. No area of Florida is alike. Miami is not like Miami-Dade isn't like Palm Beach. Palm Beach isn't like Orlando. Orlando isn't like Tallahassee. None of these places are like Walton County or the Panama City area. And then you got Jacksonville. So no place in Florida is alike. So when it comes to home rule, I believe that we elect local officials to do the job that they're supposed to do, which is to serve at that level. Whether it came to the design guidelines for homes, a lot of these things, if you live in an HOA, they don't have the opportunity to interfere with that. But those who live in regular parts of the city that aren't under the design review board or in the HOA fall to the prey of, they fall under those guidelines where they preempt home rule. We preempt it in every way, such as Senator Lori Berman just told us. The problem is we elect people at the local level to do that job, not those of us at the state level. We should really deal to and stick with the state issues. That's what we're designed to do. That's why we have different levels of government, and every time we get a chance, we actually preempt it.
Thank you so much, Senator. And lastly, Representative Roth, you have a response to this as well, I believe.
Yes, sir. I guess I'm the token guy, right? So I get to respond to most of these. This is I generally agree with the premise that everybody's saying that home rule is sacred. I totally agree with that. Where we disagree is in very, very specific situations. I'll give you an example. My first year in 2017, I was asked to pass a bill to make it illegal for cities to ban pet stores. Where you sell a dog or a cat, because they were concerned about that. And since Palm Beach Gardens had banned pet stores, I wasn't going to mess with that. My point being is it's a very contentious issue dealing with a very specific. It is interesting that we had two bills, HB 839 and 919, that had to do with fuel and natural gas. And so what I'm just reminding everybody is, if you're trying to pass gun laws in your city to restrict gun laws, if you're trying to pass laws to prohibit gas stations, if you're trying to pass laws to prohibit using natural gas as a fuel because you believe the planet's going to die in 10 years, we as a state legislature in general are going to be in favor of protecting state commerce, because that's how we make money and that's how we run all the projects we need to run, is through tax.
Thank you so much, Rep. We just have to go to the next question. I'm very sorry.
All right, well, thank you all for your responses. So on to our next question. Why would legislators allow a rise in homeowner insurance rates knowing that people have been out of work, sick, or living on a fixed income? Who would like to respond? And remember, you'll have 90 seconds. Representative Skidmore, I see your hand's already up. Would you like to respond? No? All right. Representative Hardy, I see your hand is up. No? Okay. Representative.
Whoops, sorry. No, I was on mute. I've already done it. I think I was the first one tonight.
It's okay.
So now, look, I just want to be clear. The legislature does not have the authority to unilaterally raise or lower rates for homeowners insurance. What the legislature does have the authority to do is to pass laws that set the regulatory table, so to speak, for the insurance industry. And one of the disappointments that I had this legislative session was that we gave in to the insurance industry and to the insurance lobby. Every year, the insurance lobby comes to the legislature and says, homeowners insurance rates are going up. And if you do this one thing, then we can make them go down. And that one thing typically makes it more difficult for the insureds, the homeowners, to get their promise from the insurance company when the insurance company doesn't want to pay up. And every year the legislature does that one thing, passes that one bill that the insurance industry says will lower rates, and lo and behold, next year rates go up. And then the insurance industry comes back and they manufacture a crisis and they say, if you do this one thing to rig the system in our favor against policyholders, then rates will go down. And it's rinse, wash, repeat every single cycle. And the legislature did this. We even made it difficult for citizens to lower their property rates while allowing them to increase their property insurance rates at an even faster clip. It's complete and utter nonsense. The legislature has been captured, or at least the leadership has been captured by the insurance lobby to the detriment of the folks that we serve. And I hope that one day we can reverse some of the things that we've done there.
Perfect. Thank you for your response. And Senator Berman, I see your hand is up. You're up next.
Thank you. This is a really, really difficult issue. As Rep. Hardy said, we don't have control over insurance rates. There are so many factors that go into this. One of the big reasons why rates were raised was because the reinsurance rates were raised. Plus you have issues with adjusters. Plus you have issues with the insurance companies, obviously, what their profitability is. Plus you have issues with the attorneys who are bringing all these lawsuits for bad faith claims. And certainly if it's done in bad faith, then they should be entitled to it. But it's all gotten totally out of control here in the state. We did do a bill this year. It did pass. I I'm hopeful that the bill will have somewhat of a positive impact. Some of the things in the bill included addressing these insurance adjusters, addressing the time period. We changed it. We did limit it from 3 years to 2 years for making a claim. I'm hoping that if you have a problem, it will show up within 2 years. We have to look into those kinds of things because it's becoming a crisis. And the real crisis is we're not going to have any insurance carriers in the state. And we need to have insurance carriers. So we all need to work together to figure out how to have insurance carriers, but how to also lower people's rates. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your response. I don't see, oh, there we go. Representative Roth, you're up next.
Thank you. And I was excited to respond there the last second because I wanted to tell everybody how much I do appreciate all our state reps and senators from Palm Beach County. We do try to work together. And thank you, Senator Berman, for what you just said. I actually served for 10 years on the board of Southern Farm Bureau Life Insurance and as vice president of Florida Farm Bureau. And a lot of people know that most farm bureaus do have life insurance companies, and Florida Farm Bureau is the only, to my opinion, the only company that only sells homeowners insurance in the state of Florida. And therefore they have, with Lloyd's of London, 4 reinsurance policies to cover 4 hurricanes. So I do know a little bit about property insurance, and it's very interesting in House Bill 305 that we're dealing about things like roof repairs that were being fraudulently done. And another thing that was very interesting is that it dealt with citizens. Charlie Crist is the luckiest governor in the state of Florida because the 4 years he was governor from 2006 to 2010, there were no hurricanes. And if we'd had several major hurricanes, citizens would have gone bankrupt. So we did provide certain legislation in there to, slow down people moving to citizens and trying to get them back into the regular market. I hope, like Senator Berman, that the things we did will help lower the cost because my homeowner's insurance has gone up 35%.
I'm sorry, Representative.
Thank you.
Time is up. We hit 1 minute and 30 seconds, but thank you for your response. Would anyone else like to go? No? All right, moving on to the next question.
Thank you, Michaela. So my next question is, Florida is the 4th largest economy in the United States. However, it also ranks 46 when it comes to the nation average of per pupil spending in public schools. The national average happens to be $12,600. However, Florida only spends about $9,300 per pupil. What was done this session to help improve the statistic, if even anything was done? I'll see Rep. Hardy wants to go first.
Yeah, former classroom educator here. Yes, we are one of the largest states in the country measured by population, but also measured by our economic output. We have, I want to say, about
when do you want to go?
Fortune 500 companies in the state of Florida, and yet we systemically underfund public schools, and we didn't do anything to address that issue. Now, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle will say that we need to broaden our definition of what constitutes a public school. They'll say that we fund schools even though they're not run by the public, and that those figures need to be counted in this number. But the fact of the matter is there's no accountability at these private schools that get our public dollars. As an educator, we had to administer standardized testing. We had to be certified. We had to do all sorts of compliance things to make sure that we were held accountable to the public because we took the public's dollars. Well, these private schools and these voucher schools, they have no such accountability measures, and yet they continue to get additional money from the legislature, as was the case this year. So we did absolutely nothing to strengthen our public schools. We did everything to weaken them and to withdraw support from them to the detriment of the teachers that are still underpaid in this state, and also to the detriment of the students who need to see us invest in them and their futures. And that's what frustrates me the most. I just wish that we could all agree that something like public education should be public.
Thank you so much for that response. Does any other senators or representatives have a response? I do not see anyone's hand raised at this time. Going once, going twice.
You have two hands raised.
Yeah,
2 hands raised.
I actually see one. I believe it's Representative Schlossberg.
Yes.
Yeah, I raised my hand. Hi. And I agree with everything that Representative Mari Hardy just said. I mean, we have to do more for public education. Although this session, we did fund, we did do an increase, base increase of $53 in the student allocation. It's very, very small. We did provide for veteran teachers to receive a salary of $47,500, which is an increase, but it's only for the oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Salary increases for veteran teachers and other eligible instructional personnel. I mean, but we really could do more. We really should do more. I know last session was there was progress being made, and I think we had a lot of our unions at the table during legislative session. So I think we look forward to more negotiation next session and more dollars allocated.
Thank you, Representative. Senator Berman, I saw that you had your hand raised. Sorry about that, by the way.
Thank you. No problem. I have to run, so this is going to be my last comment also. I wanted to thank Janine. I wanted to thank When We All Vote, all of you for putting this program together. I totally agree with my colleagues. We need to do more. We had $10 billion from the federal government in this year. We call them Biden bucks that came from the American Rescue Plan. We could have given, we put like something like $6 billion into reserves. We could have used that money for education. You know, we are one of the states in the union that have, what did you say, 46th in the union for per pupil spending. And sometimes, unfortunately, it shows, you know, so a lot of our students are failing, you know, continuing to fail 3rd grade. Our reading scores and our math scores are not where they should be. So I would like to see us raise the amount that we give. And also it is concerning that we have continued to divert our money to voucher programs and a lot of that voucher money goes to private schools. And I'm a child of public education, and I'm a firm believer that education is the way to advance and succeed in this country. And I want everybody to have the best education, and I want to continue to really strongly fund our public education. Thank you so much for having me on this evening, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with all of you.
Thank you, Senator. Lastly, I have Senator Powell with the sweet tie would like to respond to this question as well.
Thank you very kindly. And what I'll tell you is I echo the sentiments of many of my colleagues. One of the things that we've seen, Rep. Schlossberg said it, we had an increase of $53 this year for public education per student funding. When you calculate for that and you account for $53 over a full year, when you account for inflation, we actually are going backwards in terms of the spending for education for our students in the state. As I've looked over the time that I've been in the legislature, we spend very few dollars on per student funding. We've even talked about the idea that teachers will receive an increase, but these are for veteran teachers. A lot of people who get into the teaching field, including Representative Hardy, don't stay in the field for 5 years, which means we lose longevity, we lose the opportunity for those teachers to see growth, and then you weigh that with the cost versus the benefits. And that's what we're doing here in the state of Florida. We're making it a negative externality for somebody to take on the potential or the opportunity to be a teacher. The greatest investment is in a child, and we don't invest in it.
Thank you so much, Senator Berman, or I'm sorry, Senator Powell. I'm so sorry about that.
We look
weird screen going on right here. Does anyone else have one last response, or are we good to go for the next question? All righty, Michaela, take it away.
I think we're good to go. Awesome. All right, so on to our next question. There we go. Our state legislature is very partisan. How can a citizen's voice be heard and their advocacy be effective when a legislator's mind is already made up on a policy issue? And once again, you'll have 90 seconds. And I see Senator Powell's hand was quick. So go ahead, Senator.
Well, I think one of the biggest parts of being elected is the public participation piece. And as you can see, I want to applaud Representative Rick Roth because no matter what the events are, as a Republican, he always has his door open. He listens. We don't always have to agree and we can go back and forth, but he is one of the people who I can say has an open door policy, and we work together on a lot of things. What I've seen, and I may be wrong, but when it comes to things like the League of Women Voters and a lot of these other groups, some of my colleagues do not have an open door policy. And it's as simple as walking into the Capitol. And when you walk on in the Capitol, you'll see on certain floors, representatives and senators have their doors open. That's what I call an open door policy. But when it comes to others, you really rarely ever catch their door open, even if the door is unlocked. That door being closed is like a barrier between you and I. It says, knock before entering. It says, I'm not open for talking. I am not open for understanding. And the way we change that is people have to have listening sessions, but people also have to participate and understand who's listening to them, who's talking, who's available, who's visible in public, and who's not.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much for that response. And Representative Hardy, you're up next.
Yes, thank you. You know, that's a great question. Tallahassee is a very partisan environment. The legislature is currently controlled by Republicans. The thing that worries me is that the Republican leadership has used their power to entrench the advantage that they have. That's what Senate Bill 90 is about. It's about shaving points off the electorate in ways that benefit Republicans and disadvantage Democrats. That's what partisan gerrymandering is about, which the voters attempted to make illegal, but which this Supreme Court is very unlikely to take serious. Stare decisis aside, right? And so I'm becoming increasingly concerned that we have a legislature that's more or less impervious to public opinion. And we have members of that legislature that feel that they can do whatever and get away with it because they have designed the game. They've designed this democracy to make it impossible for them to be held accountable. And it's not just happening here, it's happening all across the country. And it's becoming increasingly, such that we have a democracy, we want to affect change by democratic means, but if you've rigged the rules of the game such that folks aren't able to vote you out of office when you do a bad job because you've chosen your voters, then what recourse do folks have when you do something that clearly doesn't align with what the public believes? We saw a $15 minimum wage, which no one could get out of the legislature for years, passed with 60+% of the vote here, right? So that's just an example of how unrepresentative the legislature has become, and I don't know what we can do about it.
All right, thank you for your response. We appreciate it. And next we have Representative Skidmore. You're up next.
Thank you so much. I don't disagree with Senator Powell and Representative Hardy in their comments, but I think part of the question is how do we become effective in a very partisan environment? And Democrats are considerably outnumbered in the Florida House and Florida Senate, but as you heard at the beginning of this forum, many of us were successful in passing legislation and getting appropriations passed. And that's because in large part, we do work together. We do work across the aisle. And we do that in order to get things accomplished. I just want to get some stuff done when I'm there. And I know a lot of my colleagues feel the same way. So yes, it is a difficult environment. But if you look historically at the number of bills that pass unanimously, it's significant. So there are many, many, many things that we agree on, much more so than we disagree on. But the disagreements are the ones you hear about the most. But there is a lot of camaraderie. There is a lot of collaboration, and it's not always promoted in the same way that some of the more difficult pieces of legislation are. So we got to work across the aisle. We got to reach the hand over and bring somebody up along the way.
Well said. Thank you for your response. And next we have Representative Schlossberg. You're up next.
Thank you. And I agree with Representative Skidmore and everything she just said. This is, you know, I've had policy ideas when I was first elected that I've filed, and I've been told nobody cares, or that this is a very libertarian government. They don't want to pass this legislation, but it's about taking the meetings, making appointments, visiting with my colleagues, and just kind of persuading them to see it in a certain way. I think the more the more groups you get involved, like in my last legislation, the League of Women Voters came and testified in support of the legislation. And I think it's very powerful when you have groups of women or groups of other stakeholders that come and support that policy. So I want to encourage everybody who's listening to really work the legislators, work the senators, work the state representatives, and work the governors, and set meetings, make phone calls, send emails, because it's so important to participate in the process, especially when it's policy that you support, and to never quit, to just stay on it, stay focused, and eventually it will happen.
Perfect. Thank you for your response. And last but not least, we have Representative Roth. You're up next.
Okay, thank you. I agree with a lot of what has been said. I try to remind people all the time that I'm actually kind of a nerdy person that likes policy. I don't really care for the politics and trying to smooth people and try to, you know, win influence through being a chair of a committee. I'm very much a big believer in policy. And so I work very well across the aisle. Thank you, Senator Powell, for the kind remarks. I'm looking for policy in the middle that works for everybody. And I'm proud to sponsor a lot of the Democrat bills, co-sponsor bills, and do those type of things. Because I think when we work towards the middle and try to find things, common ground that we can do, it's called common sense. I'm very much nervous when we have so many political things. Like, to me, the minimum wage was more of a political bill, a political constitutional amendment. So I disagree that with the comment that the legislature's not listening or not wanting to help deal with issues. I think we do this, and it's evidenced by how many Democrat bills were passed this year. So I think we have Florida is better than some states. That's my opinion.
Right.
Awesome. Thank you very much, everyone. Do we have any last comments by our lovely panelists that we have tonight?
I'll say something.
Awesome. Thank you, Senator Powell.
I want to thank y'all for giving us an opportunity to come before you tonight, just to have the open forum to speak with people in the community. When We All Vote has been out here making sure to educate voters, which has been something that has been frowned upon by many groups. Well, I would say many political organizations. So I want to thank you all for doing that. I thank Janine Wester for giving me this invitation, as well as all of the board members who put this together. You two, as the host or the moderators, did a wonderful job tonight. Thank you. I always say this, and I'll continue to reiterate this point. A life of service is indeed a life that counts, and you all are making it count. Continue to do great things. I'm Bobby Powell.
Thank you so much, Senator.
Thank you,
Anyone
Senator.
else? All righty, Michaela, take it away.
All right. I guess we can check if there are any questions from the audience. If there were any questions anyone wanted to ask, we'll check in with our tech team. No. All right. I guess that is it. You guys were very thorough with your answers, so congratulations. And thank you all for joining us this evening. We want to especially thank our wonderful state senators and representatives. Thank you for your active and engaged participation this evening. We want to thank their staff members. And of course, we also want to thank Mr. Ed Chase for making himself available to us this evening.
Yes, and we invite you all to like us on Facebook and stay tuned for our upcoming fall events, including a candidates forum for the Florida Congressional District 20 House race, as well a voter education forum on redistricting. Thank you all and have an amazing night.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.